Today's episode is brought to you by elitefts.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of Elite FTS for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it. Now, onto the show.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. Does that mean we're live? Yep. Okay. He said after the first part. So, all right, we're live. Let's roll.
This is it.
This
is it.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I know it's a midday kind of matinee table talk here. I think we wanted to kind of just jump on and kind of give a little bit of a state of the union for the Elite FTS, because we've been doing all sorts of stuff over the last few months, and this weekend has been a little crazy, and I know you wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, so I'll begin with just thanking everybody for the support about John Meadows. When I heard about it, it was rough. I got the call during one of the Train Your Ass Off that we were doing, and we can talk about that when we get to the Train Your Ass Off. Mm-hmm. And it's hard. I kind of lost for words still a little bit. I thought I'd be able to say what I wanted to say, but I avoided the internet. Mm-hmm. I avoided social media just because I didn't want to see the bullshit, right? So it was a couple days, and then just the text messages and the emails and all the things that I was personally getting was kind of overwhelming. I mean, it was good. That's what I appreciate, everybody for. Then when I went to make a post, I don't remember, 3 or 4 days after, on Instagram, I tried to avoid, the temptation, mm-hmm. and it didn't work. So I started looking to see, what everybody was saying. It was, couldn't believe how good everything was. It was, I didn't expect that. I mean, I should have, because I've known John for a long time, Before this, I was trying to think of when we first started training together. I think we're going back to when he was still at the bank. So we're going back to 2010, maybe 2010, 2011. I'm not good with the dates. So it was really cool to see all the good messages, about him. I mean, it's appreciated by his family, because that's what I worry about is when somebody passes, and I was very close to John. When somebody passes and you're close to them, your emotions are kind of all over the place. But the things that's going through my head are, years later, what are his kids going to see? That's the hard part. Right. That's why I knew at some point I was going to have to see, but I didn't want to see. I'm really good at suppression and shit like that and keeping my personal life personal, which is just the way I've always been. And I probably, if it wasn't for all the text messages and the emails and calls and all that, I probably wouldn't have said anything, because I've lost people in the past and I've not said anything. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that was actually the right thing to do, looking back at this point. So I don't know if it was because I wasn't strong enough. I don't know what the reason is. It doesn't really matter, because this one I felt like I had to say something, mm-hmm. because I couldn't reply to everybody. There was just too much, I just could not do that. And I didn't want to make them feel like I'm blowing them off, because they're generally concerned. Mm-hmm. My concern was obviously for, his kids and Mary and so forth. And so I guess that's kind of where that is. I just want to thank everybody, for all the cool messages, about him, because at some point in time, his kids are going to, at least I would think, I would think so. They're going to look, they're going to see, and I'll answer any questions that people have. I don't know where to, to go from there. So
absolutely.
So that I just wanted to put that out there, that it's noticed, and thank you.
And then, I mean, you went right from the services for John right into the UGSS.
Yeah, that was another.
That was it was quite an eventful.
No, I mean it's I'm trying to not make it about me, but it was a weird couple weeks, right? Because we did the first Train Your Ass Off.
Yep.
Which we'll talk more about that. And I ended up blowing a glute out, right? So it
was mind blowing.
It was funny because I spoke to John a lot, and he kind of knew about this. And then the morning of the latest one that we did a couple weeks ago, he called me that Saturday morning because he was just cracking up. And what he was cracking up about is he found that it was a 1-minute video that Juji put up of him and Joey with me training them out here, and it was just all of them screaming. It was just brutal, like a minute of just phone ringer stuff, just amazing. And he's laughing, John's laughing so hard about that, and I'm like, he's asking me, what did they do, and this conversation went on for a while, went on for about an hour, and meanwhile we got people coming for the next Train Your Ass Off. But part of what we were talking about was, well, how hard did you push them? Like, is that like for real? I'm like, nah, I pushed them pretty hard. And we were trying to figure, it was a fucked up conversation in a way, because we were trying to figure out if we got back in that shape again, like what we were in, whatever year that was, 2015, whatever. Could we do it? And we're like, oh, hell no, we can't do that right now. We're lucky if we can do one hard set, one hard top set. And so we were trying, he wanted to know where Juji and Joe fell, because he knew both of them. Like, did I take them to the point which was the maximum volume intensity that we were training at? Was it halfway? Where was it? And I said it was probably about 1.5 years in, because people don't understand we grew and trained into a lot of the videos and stuff that they see. That just wasn't like on day one.
Roll out of bed and just hit that.
Day one was still brutal, but it was a process, because it was thought out, it was periodized, it was loading the volume over a period of time. So he wanted to know, is that like the 3-year mark? Is it the 1.5 year mark? Is it the mark before we figured shit out, or is it the mark after we figured shit out?
Right.
And it was about 1.5 years, and he was like, "Oh, so they could have done more." I'm like, "Yeah, maybe." And then I explained to him the difference was, when we brought people out to train with us, we were too focused. I was too focused on him, right? Because he was the one trying to get the pro card. So you're not really that focused on the guests that are coming out. You're watching, but you're not hyper focused. So they end up puking and all this other stuff, because you're not really looking for the signals of, okay, stop now, and that kind of stuff. So we're having this conversation, like, we should probably do it. And I'm like, oh, man, like, if we did, we're looking at 3 years, plus we're 50, we're older.
Right.
So is that going to take longer? And this was like an engaging conversation that was like for real, right? Yeah. And it's, okay, all right, we're going to, then at the very, towards the end, it's like, fuck it. I don't want to do it. And he's like, no, I don't want to do it. I'm like, we got these other people now. We can push through that. So, but anyhow, that was just an interesting story, because that happened to be the last conversation that I had with him. And it was about that. There's some other things in there too. But then the Train Your Ass Off, the last thing he said before he got off the phone was, try not to tear your ass this time, which was kind of funny. And, but anyhow, that Sunday is when Mary, that's irrelevant, that Sunday is when Mary called. But anyhow, the UGSS, which is another thing, was the day of the funeral. And to be completely transparent, I wasn't planning on going. I was going to pull my typical shit. I was going to go to the showing, but then but when I was asked to be a pallbearer, I have to do that. So that was an honor to be able to do, and it was hard, right? It's very hard. But the cool thing, there's no cool thing about that. The nice thing was coming back, right? And the UGSS that we had, we'll talk about that, was this we started these in 2008. So to come back to people that I've known, after that was in a way surreal. It was nice, it was humbling, it was what I needed.
Yeah.
You know, so that was the cool thing. For me, that was the coolest thing with that. I mean, there's a lot of other takeaways
Absolutely.
from that.
Yeah.
And it was a hard decision, you know, because I could have just come on Sunday, you know, so it was the right decision, you know, for that. So I don't know where to go from here.
Yeah.
You want to spin it into the UGSS?
Yeah,
or?
I think for those who don't know, what is the UGSS? Like, how did you start it? Because you have been doing it for such a long time. And I think if anybody's familiar with Elite FTS, they've heard of these before, these illustrious events, but they're not necessarily sure what they actually are.
Yeah, they I would say the official start date was 2008, and Jacob has a photo, you know, of who was in that one, at least a lot of the people that were in there. Are you going to throw that up? Okay. But before that, there's been different iterations of our gym. So it was on Main Street, and that was S1's whatever Jim called it. Wendler. So Jim, you know, it gets mixed up, right? And then when we moved to Maple Street, it was a small storage area that was kind of right next to the warehouse. And then as the company grew, especially the apparel, we had to move the apparel into where the gym was, and then the gym out. So it went out to an old John Deere dealership is what it was, propane heated out there. So while we were in S2, which was the 400 square foot place, Croc had come out once to train. Justin came out once to train. It wasn't really like an underground type thing. It was just content stuff.
There it is.
Yeah. And then sometime in 2008, I don't know exactly who pulled it together. All I know is a lot of the team members wanted to get together to train, and the powerlifting gear was multiply was a big thing. So there was a lot of, you're trying to send emails to show people how to use their gear. And that doesn't work, you know, so it's getting them together for that. So there are a lot of reasons why they got together, and it was to train. And this one here, you know, Todd Brock was there. So, I mean, he was here Saturday. Yep. You know, I train with him now. Then, you know, Mike Suderick, Jeremy Frey, Rich, I can't remember his last name. It will come to me here in a second. And then Croc and Wendler and myself. And AJ Roberts, I think the other guy is a friend of Chris's. He was on our team for a while. He was an author. He's since passed away as well. And then JL was part of it. Matt Winning was part of it. George Halbert was part of it. And their little part of it was they were having this side contest to see who could bench 600 raw first. And I don't know. I can't remember what the outcome was with that. Yeah. But I think a couple of them did. Yeah. And that was the original part. And then once that was over and everybody left, you know, that I remember Jim and I having a conversation like, holy shit, this was pretty cool, because we were learning things that we didn't know training wise, because, you know, people had, Jeremy was more block, you know, people had different training philosophies, definitely learning more about the equipment, you know, everybody benefited, you know, from that and walked away. And then when we did it, we didn't tell anybody about it. Right. You know, so that's where the underground, because we didn't want anybody to show up. It's like, no, this is just for these team guys, and this is just for that. Nobody else, no. You know, and Ted Tolson was there as well. So, and that's kind of how it started. Then it became something that was repeated every 6 months, and then I fucked it up. I mean, it's basically what happened is, you know, we started doing seminars. Then, you know, the team members would come in. It's like, well, let's do a UGSS before the seminar. So let's do that first, then do the seminar. Right. Or let's do the seminar, then we'll have the UGSS after the seminar. So it started to get fucked up. You know, it started to become
convoluted about the purpose.
Convoluted, right? And not personal. You know, I don't want to say private. Not as I guess private would kind of be the word. It started to feel like work, you know, and then there's guests, and there's a bunch of guests that you don't know, where there's the guests were the one that we just had, you know, the guests that the team members bring that's completely different than guests that you're selling spots to, or guests that are coming to a seminar. And it changes the dialogue between people that have known each other for 5 years, 10 years on what they're talking about. You know, in reality, what ends up happening, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, what ends up happening is the conversations become dumbed down training wise, because you're catering to the guests that have come.
Right.
Instead, and there's a lot of things that you already know about the team members and the people that you've known for so long. They're not known by the other people, you know. So when you have people that you've been, you know, acquaintance with, friends with for 10 years, there's a lot of assumptions that it's not an assumption. There's a lot of things you already know. You don't have to cover that, you know. Then it's the conversations, especially training wise and personal wise as well, are way higher.
Yeah.
Because a lot of businesses have started through these things, you know, because a team member will ask something and somebody will say something else. And it's like, well, you should try this. You should try this. That kind of gets lost when all this other stuff is going on. So what I wanted to do with this one is just dial it all the way back. It's like here.
Keep it
and
simple.
yeah, so we brought in alumni as well, where normally it would only be the current team members that are contributing to the site, current sponsors. This is we're going to bring back, you know, everybody. We're going to bring back the alumni, you know, and
it's fucking cool to see.
Yeah. So like Croc was at the first one. He was at this one. JL had you know, he was going to come, but then he had something else pop up. And Todd, you know, was at both. Frey had a last minute thing. He would have been here too.
Steve Goggins was here.
Goggins, yeah, he was a lot of the original ones as well.
Yeah.
So, and these are people that I've known for a decade. Like I said, it was going from, you know, a funeral to being with people that you've known for a decade. You know, it's healing, I suppose. I don't know the word to describe it, but it's different than being around people you don't even know. You know, and that was nice, but and it wasn't about content, you know. No. We've done them before, and it was always about content. Now, we wanted pictures for the site and all that stuff, so we obviously were doing that.
Yeah, we weren't taking people out to film how to do deadlifts.
No,
you know
no,
what I mean? It wasn't any of that shit.
No, I mean, COVID's fucked a lot of people up. They haven't seen people. They haven't been, you know, socially that active. So that was my thing, is let's bring some people together that normally don't get a chance to see each other unless it's a meet, you know, every few years or something that we're doing.
Yep.
Let's bring them all back and kind of like reintroduce them to each other, and you know, and rekindle those relationships, right? Because I think that's needed.
That's the biggest part.
You know, I just think it's needed everywhere for every reason, right? Because you bring in these, you know, team members and people from all these different backgrounds, and it's, you know, it's a good thing. There's nothing bad about it. And the only difference between this last one and the other ones was 70% of us weren't training, you know, which is what I was actually looking for.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, you know, you want people training and all that stuff, but we can do that, you know, differently.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted those relationships to be, I wanted to see them.
Oh,
I mean,
for
from
sure.
a selfish standpoint, I wanted to see them.
Well,
I mean, some of them I haven't seen for a long time.
Absolutely. And it's like you had said, you brought the alumni in, and those were the names that I learned about first from Elite FTS. So to walk into a room and it's Goggins, it's Croc, it's Brian Carroll, it's Wendler, it's Vincent, it's all these people that I, for the last 10 years, like have read about and have seen videos. It was surreal.
3 generations of team members.
It was amazing. And to be able to have just walk up and shoot the shit with everybody, and regardless of background, regardless of what people believe, we were all in the same room for the same reason, because we're all team members.
Yes,
and that's the coolest part.
And the live, learn, pass on. That is it's in my DNA, right? It is who I am. That's why it's the vision of the company. It's not just a statement. It's who I am. It's what I do. It's why I live. So to see these people, these team members, that a lot of them were brought in as athletes. A lot of people forget that. They came in as athletes training for the WPO or training for whatever, you know, World Powerlifting Championship or whatever it was at that time. To see them now, 10 years later, some 15 years later, when 2008, I mean, we're going back, 13 years, right? To see them now, 10, 13 years later, and they're bringing they have their own crews. They're coaching, 10, 15, Joey had 35 people or something. Right?
Yeah.
So he's got a ton of people, Steve's got they're not coming out to peak for their meet, because that was the other part of a lot of this is we tried to schedule them so it was the last heavy day before the biggest meet of the year. That way they could better prepare for the meet, because they're in a different environment, different monolift, different bar, so the specificity is perfect for what that was. So a lot of them were timed that way. So this wasn't that. This was, okay, look at this. These guys now are doing what basically Jim and I were doing for them when they came out. Now they're doing it for their people when they came out. And in some cases, the people they did it for were here doing it for. That's what I'm saying. There's three deep, so to see that from my perspective was very cool. Right? Because you can see article hits and you can see content being shared in traffic and all that, but it's a human level when you're seeing that, how much stress, and not even that, but why they were brought in the first place, with the potential to do exactly what they're doing, now, and to see that have grown, to what it is was humbling, I guess, and actually great to see, because the people who are now under them will be them,
right?
5 or 6 years. So it is actually showing what we are doing,
Absolutely.
And I like for you guys to see that and other team members to see that, because it doesn't hit you the same when you just see stats online. When you see it physically happening, then you get the perspective that I'm seeing, and that's what we're basically here for.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, for me personally, it was my opportunity to, again, selfishly just meet all of these people for the first time in person, right? I've had conversations with a lot of people online or through DMs or whatever, or emails, but to be able to walk into a room and get under a bar with them and just kind of have there was no expectations. It was just like, we're here all for the same reason. We're all training. We're all doing something. We're all just standing around talking about training or talking about anything. It doesn't matter. But it was such a cool experience for me personally, I threw myself in some briefs and I was playing around with some deadlifts for the first time. And I was getting advice from Goggins. I was getting advice from Dave Tate. I was getting advice from Joe Jordan. I was getting advice from Joey Smith. I was getting advice from all these people. I'm like, what the hell is going on, man? This is such a cool experience. And to be a part of that is absolutely, I'm going to treasure the memory of that for a very, very long time, because it was something that you can't get anywhere else, right? To have like you had said, the generations of coaches, of lifters, of experience all in the same room, and we all are flying the same flag, and we're all thinking and doing the same, pushing towards the same sort of goals, and to see that, I got to talk to a few of the athletes training under a few of the alumni members.
Yes.
And we're having the same conversations. It's like, oh, you're doing this meet? Oh, cool. I'm going to try this one. And it's just, we're making those connections now a generation deeper.
Yes.
Or two generations deeper. Right?
Yes.
And it's like, oh shit. This is something that you cannot force. This is something that you cannot just pull out of your ass and just create. This takes years and years and years of consistent effort, of really kindling relationships and building those relationships. And you walked in this room, it was like a fucking family reunion. It really was. It was like everybody knew everybody and everybody was helping everybody. Yeah. And anybody could ask any question to anybody in the room and they would stop what they were doing and help that person.
That's the point. You can't, like you said, you can't force it. You can't monetize it. And that's why it's not going to be duplicated, because it starts with finding the people that care, and then kind of moving from there. And then, is a leader or whatever you want to fucking call it, you weed out the ones that are only about the monetization, because then that dilutes that. So that's the cool thing about it, because that's what got me into this shit, is people wanting to help me that didn't have to necessarily help me, and not charging anything for it and just doing it because it's the right thing to do, and then because they care. Now, I'm not saying that you can't make money, because that's been misunderstood for many years with the whole thing, but that's also probably the surreal part of it, right? Because I'm walking into people that I know care, and it's a different thing than walking into people that are only there for selfish reasons. They're all here for a bigger reason, to be a part of whatever this is,
right?
That you can't really define. But I'm fortunate to be part of that, or whatever it is. I can't define it.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know what. It's just really cool.
Yeah, and it's like I'd said before, and I'm kind of restating what I've already said. It's that feeling of just like, this feels right. Like, it wasn't. Usually with like big groups, you may be like, oh, I'm worried about this person and this person. All of that shit went out the window. Like, as soon as everybody walked in, it just felt like everybody, like you had said, was doing it for the right reasons, which is very, very cool to see. Now, in terms of the size, was this the biggest UGSS that you've ever had?
No. When we had, it was part of seminars.
Oh, right.
Now you have a seminar with 100 people or 80 people that are signed up, and then say it's a learn to train, which is one of the seminars. So you got 7 different racks. You got 5 coaches per rack. There's 12 people per rack. I mean, you have a fuck ton, of people that are in here. Now, as far as without any seminar or outside reason, yeah, probably. Yeah, it probably was.
Yeah.
And it's also been a long time, so when I started sending the invites out, because a lot of the alumni have been talking about it for a long time, and I didn't really know how to go about it, because do I just do them? What do you do? And I think it was when I was on vacation, I'm like, fuck it, I'm just going to send it out.
I saw the email.
Yeah, I'm just going to send it out and just see what happens,
yeah.
And then a lot of them I don't have emails for, it's text, and that it worked out, it worked out better than what I thought it was going to work out. So the overall message is, the cool part of it. So, and then we got some cool photos, pictures and stuff like that, and built new relationships too, which is part of the whole thing. So, it was cool.
Yeah. So, and it was cool to see that, pretty much that next generation of potential athlete, potential coaches or whatever. And yeah, it was it's like, I'll look at the pictures and I'm like, holy shit, like that was all, everybody was in that same room. Like,
yeah.
It's crazy.
The point that, I guess a good point that just you kind of reminded me of right there is, people will ask me a lot of times, what do I need to do to be a coach? Do I need to be an athlete? All this kind of stuff. To me, you got to be able to fit in that room. You have to be a part and fit with all those people. Yep. Right? Now there's different backgrounds, there's all kinds of stuff. But the common goal is the same. The passion's the same. I have to be able, and you don't always know. Like, there's no way to ever know. But it can't be like, oh, there's no way. And, sometimes you know that real quick. Sometimes you don't. So.
Well, it's funny. Like, I spent most of my day Saturday just bouncing around, loading a plate here, spotting here, having a conversation, jumping in, spotting again, just like trying to help as many people as possible, and just, make myself as useful as possible to everybody in the room, because I know that's the sort of thing that will make the biggest difference for, everybody in the room, right? Yeah. Like, everybody needs to know that they are getting spotted. Like, you are safe. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just being a good training partner for everybody that walks in that door.
I mean, for you guys though, it's a little different though too. Right? Yeah. It's different than the other people, because, and I don't think that they really understand, the work that you all put into it. Right, so you're paying attention. Does everybody have what they need?
Oh, right.
They're not like doing that. No, do we have water? Is they going to dehydrate? Are they going to die?
Yeah, right.
Do we need with photos? There's a lot of shit going on that's part of all that, which is appreciated. And they all appreciate it as well. They just don't know it. But, if I sat them down, they'd be like, holy shit, they got to do all this. I'm like, yeah, man, it doesn't just.
Yeah, oh, for sure. But even if none of that existed, I
Yeah.
think everybody in that room would still be doing the same sort of thing, is like checking out what you're doing in this mono, making sure you're all set. You know what I mean? Just being that supportive team member that I think is what brought them all to this room in the first place.
Yeah, so I think it's just, we're just having a conversation here about it, but to pull the listeners into it, I think the takeaway here is, if you want to advance faster in bodybuilding, powerlifting, whatever it is, get involved in some type of network of people that have the similar goals that can help you do that. So maybe it is a training crew, maybe it's not, maybe it's just an online training crew. I don't know. What I'm saying is, when you're running solo, you're running solo, and you're losing a lot. When you're part of a bigger network of people, a training group or whatever it's going to be, it's going to expedite everything, because I guarantee, at least with me, there's always been people that have gone where I'm not yet. So then I can reach out and say, how do you get there? There's always those people. So you got to be around those people to have that insight, and other people too that are going to say, what the fuck are you doing? I mean, there's different facets with the whole thing.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's that old. There's an old quote of, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go with somebody else, right? Like, that's kind of that whole idea as well. Is, again, it coming back to the UGSS is if anybody had a question about anything, you could find somebody in that room with an answer.
Oh yeah. From
clinicians to coaches to athletes to this to doctors to teachers to everybody. There was everybody from
engineers across the board.
It was amazing.
Meatheads come in many shapes, forms,
and that was the coolest
education.
part, right? So I was working with, I was talking to Zane, and he was squatting and his knee started to hurt, and I was like, you know what? I know somebody like in this room right now that can help you, and I was like, Danny.
Oh yeah.
And then they linked up, and all of a sudden Danny's helping him with his knee, and all of a sudden it's feeling better, and now he's squatting again, and it's like that's like it. We have the resources here. Like they're all in here, all in this room, and they can help everybody else. And that was really cool to see that just firsthand.
That's what comes from that. That's the network, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, Dan Dellenberg pulls me aside and says, "Hey, look at this. Something with the rack. You ever thought about doing this? Oh shit! So now we're prototyping something. That's just that's having that broad network of people with different professions it's a big thing, because when your specialty is training and that's all well, imagine if somebody else just loves to train and they're highly advanced in bodybuilding, powerlift, whatever it is, but then their specialty is in some of the things that we talked about, engineering, pharmacy, something that's completely different. The way they see it is completely different. I want to know how they see it.
Yeah.
Because it's a different view, it's a different perspective that can be integrated into what you're doing. And
so how do you think nowadays, obviously, internet's a massive part of everyday life, how would you find those sort of interest groups? What would you say for somebody?
I would say the first thing that you have to do is drop the internal narrative that bodybuilding's fucked up, powerlifting's fucked up.
Yeah.
It's just a mess. It's all a bunch of, because all you do then is focus and look at the bad. And that is not the biggest percentage of what is a part of any of these sports. In powerlifting, you got federation drama, I'm sure. I mean, I don't watch any of it anymore, but I'm sure there's always federation. There's always some bullshit that's going on. Out of all the lifters that compete, and let's go bigger, all the people that just train like a powerlifter, let's say it's 500,000 people. So you're forming your opinion on an entire fucking sport because of what you see online by maybe fucking 25, 50, 100 people. That's not on those people. That's on you, right? That's your decision to think that the sport sucks and the sport's corrupt and this is corrupt and the hell is the same. So get rid of that, right? Because then all you're going to see is that.
Right.
So drop that, and then you'll be amazed at how much really cool shit is out there. So then I am sure there's, 50 to 100 people that Reddit groups. I'm sure there's Facebook. There's different networks all over the place. But you're not going to look if you think the entire fucking sport of either thing is corrupt and polluted. And will you run into bad actors? Of course you will. That's life. Get over it. Just move on and find somebody that's not. It's not that complicated. But that's the first thing, because that's the thing that I did when I was going through and looking at a lot of stuff. I didn't see any bad stuff about John, but I did see a lot of stuff about, well, John was a bright star in a fucked up industry. Like, really, the whole industry, the whole fitness industry, the whole fitness industry is fucked up. No. Maybe your perspective and what you're looking at is that you're looking at the wrong stuff.
Yep.
You know, if I had a choice between looking at a pile of dog shit or looking at a nice clean meadow, I'm going to look at the nice clean meadow. So you're not going to look. Right. That's a terrible fucking
no, but there could be dog shit in the meadow.
Yeah, I know. It's a terrible. You get what I'm saying. No, but when you do that, then your perspective and your ability to see the good is way bigger than the more focused view. You know, it's not that hard just to skip over. Okay, stupid fuck. Boom, skip over. Go over here. Oh, cool stuff. I want to learn from this. Right? It's not that hard.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where people spend so much time taking the actions of an individual and sticking it, like you had said, sticking it onto a larger audience.
Drama sells.
You're right.
Pain sells. Drama sells. All this stuff sells, right? So that's what people are going to put out because they want the views, the traffic, the monetization, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as you see that, that's your indication, at least to me, turn away, go someplace else. Because you're going to get sucked down a rabbit hole. It's just going to lead you mad, upset, whatever it's going to be.
Right.
Those 2 hours or whatever could have been spent trying to find the group that you're talking about. You know, then that can lead to the ability to go to, you know, something like a UGSS or just a training group. I mean, these things have, not this, but I mean, little training groups get together all over the place.
Oh, for sure.
All the time.
Yeah.
You know, so you're losing the opportunity there, and that's on you. I mean, I should say that's on you. Right. You know, that's on the individual.
Yeah.
That's your own personal responsibility. That's nobody else's responsibility. And that's the first thing. And I think once you get that little shift in perspective, everything else is going to fall into place.
Oh, yeah. Right? It's the idea that it's sometimes in our head, we think we should burn a bridge before we build one, right? Like we want to cut ties with something because in our head, it's like, oh, no, I don't agree with that one thing they said, so they're all bad, so I don't want to do that thing
Which
ever.
Which is stupid, too.
Oh, for sure.
I can find things I disagree with everybody in there. There's nobody I'm going to agree with everything. There's nobody.
No.
You know, but look at how much you lose. You're losing the basics first off, because everybody, no matter what their perspective, unless they're a complete idiot, right? And you'll know that immediately.
Which you'll learn from that too.
Yeah, I know. You're going to learn do the opposite. But unless they're a complete idiot, everybody's basics are still going to be the same.
Yeah.
You know, so that's pretty easy to see, and that would be my answer to that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we should mention as well is if you're interested in finding a training group, go to where the training groups are, right? Like, no one's going to come to you say, hey, we're a training group. We would love for you to come join us, right?
Yeah.
Like, just the act of showing up and just helping, you know, I think will lead to tremendous amounts of benefit for the group as well as for you, and can open a lot of doors.
So right? I think your perspective there is going to be better than mine because but we'll go down this road a little bit. I used to have to do that, you know, not at first because I was thrown into a group, but when I was playing around with bodybuilding in college, it's like, okay, where are the bodybuilders train? That's where I'm going to go. All right. And what time do the best bodybuilders train? That's when I'm going to go. I'm just going to hide in the corner. I'm just going to work really hard like I always do. And then maybe there'll be some, hey, what's going on? Can I get a spot? You kind of work your way know, into that. And then 6 months later, you're training with them. I've never had to do what you're saying. So I'm going back a long time saying, hey, do that. That's what worked.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? That's what worked 20 years ago.
Right.
Is that what you're saying? Is something like that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like for you specifically with the bodybuilding is like you took the time and effort to find out when the best bodybuilders are training and where.
Yeah.
You decided to show up and just be there to start.
Yeah.
Step one is be there. If you're not there, you're not going to be a part of it.
And that wasn't that hard back then either, because I just went to a local show.
Yeah.
And then you're listening. Everybody trains at Hard Bodies Gym. Like, okay. Because they announce where they train.
Right.
Like, I guess that, because they all are they're winning.
Yeah.
I guess that's where I need to go.
Right.
So your chances of succeeding from that way were pretty good. I think if it was a powerlifting meet, it's kind of the same thing. They're all, you may not get it might be a little bit different because you don't know who's going to compete, who's not. But I'm just throwing shit against the wall. I mean, there's a way you can at least now. I mean, I didn't have the internet, and I was around before the internet. That's fucked up, right? But you can at least narrow it down just with regular, Facebook, Google searches, or whatever you're going to do. To here's 10 possibilities, and then start looking around. And
I think, it's easy to. Obviously nowadays everything you just Google it, you find it online, you do this, you do that. But that at the end of the day, you have to build a relationship somehow. That's the only way you're going to, develop this crew or develop this community where you have those common themes, or maybe develop your own UGSS style thing one day. It has to start with a real, genuine relationship. And it started with, it was just you and Jim, right? And now if you look back at this past weekend, look at all the people that were in that room for the same event that you and Jim started.
Yeah. That's a big reason why I wanted Jim, here. Yeah. He's been to most of them, right? But usually just stop in a little bit later. But yeah, he did me a huge, huge favor on this one because I couldn't be here, until later. So I sent him a text. And he said, no problem, I'll be here whenever you want. So, and stayed all day, because these are people that he was in those original ones. Some of them were small. We did one at Murph's, which if you search around online, that's funnier than hell. Yeah. Whatever video we did on that, because DeCenzio's like 350 pounds. I'm wearing the hood. Jim's making fun of me. That's a classic one. But that was a good one. But there's been a few that because we moved them around a little bit too.
Yeah, it was funny. I told Wendler when he was training, he was doing his weighted vest, his pull-ups and his push-ups and everything. I go, Jim, cut that athlete shit out. This is not the place for it. I was like, you got to get into a squat suit or something here.
Oh,
that ain't it. So besides the UGSS, I just wanted to touch on a little bit briefly. I know we're going to jump into a longer episode on it, but we had the UGSS and we had a couple rounds of the Train Your Ass Off. In terms of slam packing a month full of events, I don't think we could have done any more. It
was like one open weekend. That was it.
Yeah. So for those who may not know, you want to do a little background on the Train Your Ass Off, on what those are?
Yeah. Are we going to speak about that more?
Yeah. So I just wanted to give just a small little insight.
Okay. What that is, if people search our YouTube, they can find, I think we have a playlist of them. But what it originally was is I wanted to bring in a small group of people and teach the squat and bench and deadlift. So originally, you were part of the original cruise. It started with just like the squat. I think it was just the squat. Was it the squat and the deadlift, or was it?
It was a squat and deadlift.
So squat and deadlift.
Yep.
Teach those lifts and show how I break it down and teach that, and then after that, teach them effort. What training hard really is, like to a 10 really is. That's how it started, was okay, we're going to show you the lifts, we're going to teach and show the value of technique, and then we're going to show the value of what the accessories and supplemental exercises are, but we're going to show that by, there's RPEs, RIR, there's all these different scales. They're all personalized. I think everybody gets that. They're all personalized, but they're all individualized to how the person is going to self-assess what they're doing. So I try to show them what a real hard 10 is, and then tell them you should probably never do that. Very rarely do that, but you do need to train at a 6 or a 7. That has a little bit more context, right? Now, granted, the bigger the numbers, the harder it is to lay context to. Like if it's a 1 to 10, what's the difference between a 2 and a 3? What's the difference between a 7 and an 8? Right. What really is the difference? Then you can take it to 1 to 5, right? Which still, the easiest would be 1, 2, and 3, right? Easy, medium, hard. but there's a lot of range between medium and hard. So that's how it started. And then bringing it back this time, I wanted to offer it as a weekend. So it would be squat and deadlift on day 1, bench on day 2, because there's a Q&A part of it, which is specific to whatever questions they have, whatever needs they have, which we're going to formalize a little bit more, but at least part of it, because that's the biggest takeaway to me, because now they can go back, and if they work with a coach, they can work better with that coach.
Right.
If they don't work with a coach, they're going to have the confidence in how to train themselves. So it just makes them better as a lifter, however you want to define that. If it's strongman, we don't even vet that way. We're vetting by, the strength of the squat, if you really want to get down to it. I mean, that's the first thing. And training years. Yeah. Is kind of how they're put together. And so they're still taking shape now, but it's 20 hours, over 2 days. It's been averaging 20 hours.
We set a PR on the last one.
Yes. So it's a lot of time, and there's a lot of dialogue, and we've added sections to it, which is, finding the weak points physically and then showing them movements for that is what they're long days, but they're definitely worth it, when it's said and done. I've just had shitty luck with each of them so far. Yeah. So the next one.
Fingers crossed on the next one. Yeah, I mean, and one of the coolest parts of it, and something that we are starting to see more and more of, and we're starting to kind of support more and more of, is that crew or community building aspect of it too, right? You spend this weekend with me and you and Todd and with Adam, but now you have the 6 people that you're in that group with, who all trained with you for an entire weekend, who you now know their names, you now know how hard they train, what they do, what their goals are, what their what their programs look like. You get a crash course on training crew.
Yes. And so they get that. Then we have the Discord for each one of them. So each group has their own online community, because I don't want them to lose touch with each other. Because I think what we're going to see over a period of time is they're going to start answering their own questions or each other's questions. But so we're not just throwing them to the wind, and now they can send their lifts, and we can break the lifts down and see if they're actually doing.
And break it down as a group, which is the coolest part.
So they can see that. So we can see if they're actually doing the things that we tried to teach them to do. And so far, the weak points have been different with each individual, but the last group, they were almost all the same, which was upper back, which I would say for most people, they need to build their upper back, right? But the first group, that actually was too much of a strength, for them. So it had to move more lats for a lot of them. So I'm trying to think of what we can take from the issues that we've seen with everybody. Like, what are the common issues? Obviously, there's the breathing, bracing, which absolutely. Most people, though, now kind of get it.
They're much closer.
They're way closer to where it's not as long to get it dialed in. They're really damn close to really get it figured out. That's been pretty much across the board. Technique, that kind of varies based upon style. So we've had more close, medium stance squatters than wide. It's really not been that far off. It's been off, but not. I can nitpick anything, but I'm just going back to Future, Learn to Trains and other people that have had to help.
Even participating in one of the first ones that you've done for me, hearing the critiques from that one versus hearing the critiques from this one. There's way less critiques on these rounds than there was for us. We were a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
But it's just so cool to see that the overall knowledge and experience, not even like years of experience, but just quality experience from some of these lifters who may have only been lifting for a couple of years, they're in a pretty fucking good spot.
Yeah, they're much better than they think they are, which goes back to the earlier point I was making is, there's a lot of good that's going on, online, that, novice lifters, beginner lifters are picking up a lot of really good things, so obviously it's not a terrible industry across the board.
Right.
And so that's the cool part. The biggest thing with the groups that we've had so far is probably the programming part, getting that locked in. The effort has been higher than I expected, with the hard part, the train your ass off, the super hard part, the challenge sets has been better than expected. I need to kind of up my game a little bit. It's,
well, to be fair, the first time you were hobbling on a torn glute.
Yeah. But they can have more volume. But I'm a little cautious on that because it is long. I mean, the first time we didn't have food,
Yeah, there was no food at all. It was part of it.
Yeah.
No, it's a really cool, for those who are listening to this who may be interested, we'll definitely be opening these up to more and more people and more weekends and more time slots.
Yes.
And as we continue on with the Train Your Ass Off series and the seminars and all of what we do with it, it's going to get more and more refined, and it's going to get better and better and better. And from me, who was at the first one, to being able to participate and see the last round, it's like, this shit is fucking cool.
Yeah. And at some point, and we talked about this the other day. We will figure out how to make it scalable, right? Because now it's limited.
Yeah, right.
It's because you can only bring so many people in, and there's only so many dates that you can fill. So obviously, when it comes to supply and demand, the price is high, and it's going to go up. And now that personal part, is always going to be that value. I mean, I don't know how to scale that,
Right.
There's certain aspects of it that I think we're going to figure out, how to scale so more people will be able to get involved, just probably not at that personal level, because that's going to be a tough one.
I mean, to get 20 hours with you for a weekend, like that's the...
I mean, there's only so many weekends.
Right. Absolutely. So that's a really cool... So my insight to anybody listening, as soon as these open up again, I would jump on, because there's going to be a point in time when you're not going to get 20 hours of dedicated Dave Tate time over a weekend.
Well, we had like 132 for 12 spots last time.
Yeah.
So they want to jump on.
Yeah, I would say next time we make a post, I would jump on it quick, because if you were to break it down in hourly value, you were getting an absolute steal of a deal.
Oh yeah. I don't want to do that.
No. So awesome. So I think we're going to wrap this one up, and then we'll jump into the next one.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, everybody, for stopping in.
Is this a live one?
This is a live, and actually I wanted to call out, what's his name? Where is he? John Roche gave us $100 super chat while we were talking.
Appreciate that.
He says, no question, just thank you for all your work in the strength community. # 3 spots left.
Yeah. Let's take a couple questions.
All right, let's do it.
Or if you see any on there, then we'll go to the next one.
Yeah, so what we'll do, we'll go right to the top. Jacob, you can help me with this too, in case I miss any. Is you have Chapman is at the first one. Yeah, you see? Okay, cool. So Chapman says, hi, Dave. In conjugate, should upper back work always have the element of progressive overload, like the main lift, and assistance lift? It seems that for many, back work is only an afterthought.
It depends. There's the answer, right? It depends. There needs to be a banner or a shirt made of that. The reason why I say that is sometimes the upper back work is simply because you're not activating your upper back properly. So sometimes, I would say probably half the time, it doesn't need to be addressed as a heavy compound movement. It has the go-tos are going to be like band pull aparts and face pulls. But anymore, I tell people to not do those because they've been doing them for 4 years. So if this is an activation problem and they've been doing those for 4 years, A, are they doing them correctly?
Right.
B, are they not doing them correctly because their shoulders are bound up? C, what other things can they do I'd say that's probably first. What other things can they do would be first, because most people aren't going to have somebody that's going to be able to help them determine if they're bound up or if they're doing it correctly. So let's just assume they're doing it correctly.
Right.
So any other upper back exercise that's going to be of higher reps is going to be a chest supported row, elbows out, focusing on pulling the traps tight together. Keep the weight light, just squeeze hard, full range of motion, and just really, really think about that upper back. A cable row, single arm cable row, focus on, that's a little harder for people to focus on because they can't feel it squeezed together. Standing pull down, so foot up on the bench, bar. Instead of a face pull, you just use a bar, right? So but you're going to pull it to your chest and just find that spot where you can really feel the shoulder blades come together. If that is the problem, then you're going to see a difference in your main lifts within a week or two. Because let's just say it's a terrible analogy, but you'll get what I'm saying. Let's just say the upper back's asleep. Right. And then we just smack it awake. And then it starts doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right? So how can you tell if it's one or the other? If it's happening with your warm-up sets, it's probably an activation thing. If it's happening with the heavier sets and it doesn't happen with the warm-up sets, it's probably a strength thing. Now, if it's a strength thing, what he's talking about, my answer would be yes. You have to find exercises, maybe like a snatch grip deadlift or snatch grip high pull or anything that's not a shrug. That's going to be a safety squat bar, good morning, upper back, good morning. And then that will have to be a progressive overload run over, I would say, between 3 to 5 sessions. Now, how am I going to define the sessions? If you train upper back just once a week, which I don't think you should do, but you could do once heavy, once light, that could be over 5 weeks with the same movement, or it could be Monday, Thursday, Monday, Thursday, Monday, Thursday, but after 5, switch, and go to the next thing. Unless you can't progress after 3. As soon as you can't progress, change.
Right.
So.
Awesome. We got actually a few more here. World Peace 97 says, I'm in my second off season of powerlifting. I've been focusing on bodybuilding, power building, just to improve the small muscle groups. Would you recommend something like that, or is it better to work on my supplemental work?
The supplemental work is the small muscle groups.
Right.
So repeat the question again.
So essentially what he's saying is that he's in his off season and he's been doing bodybuilding and power building, right? And his focus is going to assume when he says small muscle groups, he means like weaknesses and imbalances and things like that. Should he should he continue doing what he's doing essentially?
In the off season?
In the off season.
Okay. So first thing is this is his second.
Yes, his second off season.
So I don't know how many meets you've done, right? So let's say you've done 2 meets, 3, whatever. How many weeks do you need to get ready for the meet? That's the first thing you need to figure out. Is it 12 weeks, 10 weeks, 16 weeks? What is it? How many weeks do you need for that periodization, peak, block, cycle, whatever you want to call it? Okay. The beginning of that is what I call your starting point. So where's the next meet? When is the next meet? How far out is your starting point? Let's determine that first. Then where do you need to be at that starting point? Because you don't want to roll into the starting point not being conditioned and ready.
Right.
And
got to be ready to train.
To the best point that you can be bulletproof. Once you determine that, then that answers this question. If you're 15 weeks, 20 weeks out from that starting gate, it doesn't really... I could actually make a case for it doesn't even matter what you do right now. You could take a freaking month off and do absolutely nothing. It really doesn't. But that's where it gets into that, right? So this is when you want to build those weak points, though. Because you're far out from that. So yes, to keep doing what he's doing, but what were the biggest weak points training for the last meet? What were the glaring things that stuck out? If it's not muscle groups, then where was the lift the hardest? Where did you have the issues? Fix those, address those now. Right. And then you can have a little bit of back off away from those for 3 or 4 weeks before that starting gate, because you're going to start hitting those even harder before that. But it would be really cool if you can go into that with those being your strengths.
Right.
And then next time you'll expose different weaknesses.
Yeah, and I think people need to realize that, especially for powerlifting specifically, like you're constantly on this moving target, right? You'll start at one point, say in the off season, you're more directly, specialized towards that top end strength, and now you have to start swinging back the other way, but you can't get too far away. Yep. It's a constant, like a balancing act between those different kinds of things. So it sounds to me like he's on the right path so far. Next question we have is Jay Bell. What was the tell that Juji Mufu needed to work on his leg drive on deadlifts?
Well, the size of his, teardrop was the first. I mean, that's I'm going to look at somebody if as a lifter, like if his deadlift was where he wanted it, what would he physically look like? So what's missing here? And it actually happened to be the same thing that's missing in the bodybuilding.
Yeah,
it's a weak point for his bodybuilding. So that's not a tell. It's a starting point.
Yeah.
Like, is this the issue? Maybe, what do the hamstrings look like? What do the glutes look like? Yes, I'm looking at his ass. I'm looking at his glutes. I'm looking at his hamstring. Seeing how they're working, seeing how he walks, seeing how he moves.
And his erectors and like everything.
And then what does he do? He does the tricking. He does all this other kind of stuff. What does that involve? Is your knee, is your leg shaped the way it is because is your knee fucked up from the landing, the explosive work, the training that he does? So it's breaking that all by a process of elimination is the first thing that you're doing. Then you start looking at the lift and start seeing, okay, what is the lift doing? But you already kind of know where to look and then go from there. Now, next time I see him deadlift, he may be in prep for powerlifting. And that's not going to be the case anymore. He may fix this training for the bodybuilding.
Absolutely.
Then it's going to be something else. I want it to be something else.
Yeah, right. You don't want it to be the same thing
yes.
6 months later. All right, next question I got is from Matthias. He said, just upgraded a DIY PVC earthquake bar to a legit one. Those lockout holds have been a killer. Do you have any other recommendations for implementing the earthquake bar into a dynamic effort or max effort bench workout?
I always put it towards the end. I know some people that will try to use it and do use it as a primary movement. I'm a little hesitant on recommending people do that because it can throw you all over the place. If you're very, very solid on it and you're good with it, I'm sure everybody's seen people lift, mountains of weight, on those things, and it can be the primary. But normally it's not. I like the holds the most, just because of the stability aspect, and that's what I see most people lacking. Now, you can do the reps, full range of motion reps. I'm not telling people not to do that. I'm just going off what I've seen. So
yeah,
if he wants other things to try to do with it, I mean, there's all kinds of shit you can do with it. It's just going to fall more towards the back end of the training day.
Yeah.
Overhead presses are really fun. That would be a good one. Walkings
like the overhead walks and shit.
Not
like
just
that.
Like you hold it like a Zercher.
Yeah,
and then you walk with it that way. That's a good one.
Yeah,
that's
it is good.
Really good one. More GPP. You could do that almost every day. You could do that on any day. Probably would avoid things like tricep extensions and stuff like that. Squatting's a bitch with it.
Yeah.
So there's you can just play around with it. It's just I wouldn't put it as a primary movement right now.
Actually, when Joey was out, he made a video about talking about the 3 favorite bars, and we picked the earthquake bar for one of them, and he used it for the first time on the video. And then he asked me in the video when does it stop shaking? It's like when you make it stop shaking.
Yeah.
Next question we got. Let's see. Jerku, there's no question there. Just support. Best strength podcast and source of information. Thank you very much for that. Can close grip incline be used on dynamic day? And if so, in what situations would you program it?
It can. I've used it as the speed movement for 3-week waves. Realize that it's not chest, that it's tricep. Is essentially what you're building there. So if the triceps aren't a weak point, I don't know if I'd use it as that primary speed movement, because the speed movement doesn't always have to be the bench press.
Right.
It can be a floor press, and it can be close grip incline. It can be, I don't know about bore. It can be anything, right? Just run it for a 3-week wave, see how it impacts. You can usually see based upon how your max effort work feels, if it's productive or not productive. If it starts tanking your max effort work and it's not a circa max type of thing, then it's probably not something that you're ready to put in just yet. You know, it should make the max effort work feel a little quicker, a little smoother. So yeah, it can be put in there. It can also be put in as a supplemental exercise, you know, so the secondary exercise. That's probably how most people are going to put it in there, but I always had more luck actually putting it in as the main movement.
Awesome. So that was the last super chat that we got. We will
let's shut it down.
Yeah, let's shut this one down. Any final words? Any last words?
No, just again, I appreciate everybody's support with the Meadows situation, you know, passing, and just leave it at that. You know, I didn't want to do any piece of content without putting that out first and just move on from there, but I appreciate it. Everybody else appreciates it.
Cool. Awesome, guys. Thank you very much for stopping in. As always, make sure you rate us on iTunes, subscribe, share this out with everybody you know, and we will see you guys in the next one.